What's going on, everybody? You know that the NBA season just started.
So you know that means that we had to fly all the way to Charlotte, North Carolina for a very, very, very special episode of
Asian Guys Talk About the NBA, Jeremy Lin edition. All right, Jeremy, thank you so much for inviting us to your spot here in Charlotte, North Carolina.
All right, Jeremy, go ahead and give him like the one-sentence spiel real quick.
I played point guard for the Charlotte Hornets, and in the past I've played for Golden State, LA, Houston, New York.
It's great to have you here because, you know, we always call this Asian Guys Talk About the NBA, but now we got an Asian guy in the NBA to help us talk about the NBA. So
you were gonna add a lot of legitimacy to the discussion.
Yeah,
that
we'll see.
What do you think last season's had a theme? What would that theme be?
I would say if you could characterize last season, it would be a trailblazing year because I think that's the year where analytics was legitimized in terms of how you saw Golden State win, what they did on the offensive end, the style that they played. I mean, in a lot of ways, it revolutionized the game. This season's theme is going to be the evolution of the stretch four. The stretch four has been legitimized, and now you're going to see a lot of teams moving towards using it all the time, not just in spot minutes or here and there. It's going to be all the time.
Is the mid-range game becoming less important?
Yeah, so it's weird because I'm kind of caught in the middle, right? Like when I first came in the league, all I could do was really get to the basket. And I went to Houston, and in Houston, you were kind of discouraged from shooting mid-range shots because it's just the most inefficient shot in the game. and that is true, and I do think that's really important. But then this past summer, I really did try to work on my mid-range because there are times where the defense, that's the only shot that they're giving you.
Being a point guard, playing a lot, you did play in the Eastern Conference, but lately, for the past few years, you played a lot in the West, known for the strong guards out there. Yeah. Now you're in the East. How does it feel? Or I know it was just, you've played preseason, but what's your feeling from it so far?
You go out West and you got Tony Parker, Russell Westbrook, Steph, Dame, like there's a whole list of them. That's not to disrespect the Eastern point guards. I actually think there are really good Eastern point guards. It should be fun. I mean, preseason's tough to tell. I mean, we played the Clippers twice, and so that is Western Conference powerhouse team. But at the end of the day, when you get out there, you're just trying to hoop, and you're not really too worried about who you're going up against.
Back in the day, I remember people used to be like, I would give Steve Kerr 40.
Yeah.
But it's like, that's not what he does. Like, he's not.
And you're not giving Steve Kerr 40. Like, it's a 5-on-5 game, and like, it's like, oh my God, he can't move. Yeah, he might not be able to move fast, but if you look at his footwork, if you look at his hand positioning, if you look at how he plays within a defensive system, I mean, there's a reason why he won. You cannot win champion. And that's the thing is, like, people always look on TV and they think it's so simple, and it's like, no, you don't understand that play that you just saw. There's like 10 different variations of a defensive adjustments that could be made. He has 10 different decisions that he has to make within that 24-second shot clock. There's so many things that people don't even come close to realizing is going on in the game, and they're like, "Oh, this is so easy. Why didn't you do that?"
Because they're like, on 2K, you just do it.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I'm like, you don't even understand what's going on in 2K. You don't know how they even built the game. You don't even know what plays they're running. Right. If I told you to just draw up like an angle pick and roll and what the perfect spacing should be, and like what if one person cuts, how the entire thing should change and how each person should move, no one would be able to really understand what's going on. Even if I told you just to give me basic spacing on a pro spacing angle pick and roll, people wouldn't even really understand what that was.
I would not.
And they watch hours and hours of basketball, but it's never explained to them in a certain way, and so they're looking at it and they think like, oh man, like I've run a pick and roll before, and it's like, you have, but it's not totally the same.
Yeah. Is that what you were just referring to, and the way things shift if one person's out of position and things like that? Is that what people are referring to when they say basketball IQ?
That's part of it. Yeah, that's definitely a big part of it. Is being like so much of basketball is being in the right place at the right time, or just giving your team a chance to succeed. Like if you're in the deep corner versus if you're 2 steps up. Like if you just look at it on TV, you'll be like, oh, that's nothing. But you gotta think 2 steps is like that, and when you're driving to the lane, if someone's here versus if someone's there, it's everything, because that's either a strip or it's a layup. Like it's everything. Like it's a game of inches. You know, that's why they make such a big deal. It's like, oh my goodness, this point guard is 6'5" versus 6'3". It's okay, it's 2 inches, but it's a game of inches. And so,
can you give us 3 terms that like most people wouldn't know unless you're in the league?
Tag is, there's a defensive 3 in the key, and so there's rules about tagging and cleansing. So when a guy comes down the lane, if you tag, your timer restarts, so you get another 3 seconds.
Right.
So you got to be in a position to be able to tag, but if there's no one coming through the lane, then you got to get out and cleanse yourself so you don't get a defensive 3 in the key. So that's what tagging means.
Oh,
Okay,
those are
tagging
like
is
slang
cleansing.
terms, kind of.
Yeah.
I get it.
An easy one is like, a lot of teams call it blue, down, or ice. It's all like, normally when people think like, oh, pick and roll, it's just like, oh, you think the guy comes off the pick. But what blue, down, ice means is just you're keeping the ball on the sideline. You're not letting it come towards the middle. Because if a good point guard or a good playmaker comes towards the middle, they see the whole floor. If you keep them towards like the corner where the baseline and sideline meet, if you keep them down there, they're throwing skip passes over the top of the defense. And so you want to try to keep your defense out of rotation. So that's like a term that they'll say to try to make them not be able to use the screen.
What is a piece of advice you have to a young kid out there who's looking at your story? They love basketball, but maybe perhaps they're born into a situation where their parents is like, no, don't play AAU. We don't want to put you in the system.
Yeah, I would say, man, like enjoy the process, love it, like love waking up and just being able to play, like even to be healthy. Basketball is just different where if you're good at it, they'll find you. Like it doesn't matter where you're from, like they'll find you. And what we used to do, we used to sneak into gyms, we used to like try to set up lights so that we could see and play at nighttime, and we would get noise complaints all the time. Like that was just what we did.
What do you think about using YouTube to get discovered as a ball player now?
I think that's more the fan aspect of it. But really, to be honest, if you want to convince the guys who are going to be making the decisions, and you're talking about the coaches, the GMs, the scouts, and not even at the NBA level, but they're not as much on YouTube and in the social media scene, but you can still draw some buzz and people will still hear about it through there, and then they'll get it to the right people.
Oh, okay. Maybe their kid will show it to their dad
Yeah.
or some coaches.
Yeah, exactly.
What if marketing themselves as the next Jeremy Lin? Do you think that? Because I'm just giving that idea. I don't know. Everybody just creates an account now.
And the crazy thing is you just need one person to love your game.
I know a lot of kids, they grow up, right, and maybe they're not necessarily gifted in height or athleticism, but they always want to play like their favorite player. But maybe that's not necessarily the best way to become the best. Because like, think about it. If you're a 5'6" kid, don't try to play like a 2 guard. Like if you really learn how to play like a point guard, wouldn't that makes sense, right?
100%. My favorite player was Michael Jordan growing up, and it was like, have you ever seen me get an 18-foot mid-range ISO where I ended like, no, that's just not
The
happening,
back down
right?
fadeaway,
you know. But I loved watching him. I think what I learned from MJ was just the will to be great, and more so than anything, I was inspired by him. I was like, man, like, you know, when I was a kid, I was like, that's what I want to do. That's who I want to be. And then from there, you got to figure it out. Like, what does your game look like? So, you know, you kind of moving away from MJ's game more towards like a Steve Nash.
Right.
Is like where I had to kind of evolve as a player. And that's the thing about, you can learn from everybody. Like sometimes I'll watch like little kids play and I'll be like, that was a great move, I need it. And I'm not even joking.
Yo, that's
He learned
crazy.
from you.
That's dope.
What are you?
Like I'm serious, because that's basketball. Because it doesn't matter how great you are, somebody out there is better at you at one aspect or one move. Like, and he might not be near the basketball player that you are, but like he could have that move and you could be like, I need that.
Have you seen these hoops mixtapes on YouTube about like these high schoolers? And they're just crazy, like super athletic.
Yeah.
They're dunking, they're dribbling, like, and it's crazy to think that some of them will make it to the league, but some of them won't.
What are the 3 things that most people on the outside like us, because we're not in that world, would not know that would prevent that kid from getting to the league?
First is your ability to handle adversity. Every single person is going to go through bumps and bruises, and of all these, like, you know, the guys who have these highlight tapes on YouTube, I mean, they're all the man. And at one point, you're not going to be the man unless you're LeBron, or like you've always been the man and you always will be. But unless you're him, like, there's going to be a come time where you're going to have to settle into a different role and how you handle that. And you see a lot of guys who are great, and then all of a sudden they're not in that position and they don't really know what to do or how to handle that. 2 is, and I'll just call this love of the game. It's just, in high school, it's what you do, it's what you love. You don't really know much else. You get to college, you get more distractions, you get stuff thrown at you. Then you get to the pros, you get more stuff. Now you got the fame, you got the money, you got the social media, you got everybody in your ear, you got everybody trying to take something from you. Like, how much do you love the game? You know, that separate, you know, the people who make it and the people who don't in a lot of situations. And then the last one is just, I would say, being great at something. if you look at NBA highlights, you look at the finals and stuff, you know, Steph Curry will cross somebody up here and there, but if you added up all their points, how many of them were off of these cool sham god moves or off of sick crossovers? Or, honestly, it's not even that much one-on-one. A lot of it is system basketball. You're drawing two, you're pitching it, and now you're playing on the weak side. You're playing against rotations, against closeouts. Like, that's what real basketball is. Like, that's what's gonna get you far. And so being great at one thing and then doing that within like a team concept.
What did it take? You are born, you know, physically tall and athletic and stuff, so that's one aspect. But as far as like the skill and the drive, like what did it take to make a Jeremy Lin? Like when are we gonna see another Jeremy Lin soon? Like there's gotta be a lot of Asian kids inspired right now.
You know, for my story, it's such a, like, I feel like it's such a miracle story and I'm such an anomaly. It's hard to like narrow it down and say there's a blueprint solution, because honestly I don't, you know, in a miracle situation it's like, hey, you can't draw that up again. And I do think like
it's a miracle.
Yeah, and I think like, you know, just what God's done, like I always go back to my faith, because I mean really I could tell you so many times where I was ready to give it up and I thought it would never work out, bad games, bad breaks, where it was just like, man, this is not gonna happen. And for me to be here, there's just so many things that had to happen perfectly. But when you talk about, you know, the game itself, I would say the love of the game. You know, it has to go back to this burning desire and burning passion to play the game, love the game, to want to absorb information. And that just comes from me and my family and us just loving the game for whatever reason. Like, that's another thing. It's like, why do I love the game so much? You can't really explain that, you know? It's like, why do you love the things you do? Why are your hobbies your hobbies? You don't know. It's just, that's just who you are. Like that was what God put inside of you.
I remember when you blew up, I was, you know, like, I don't know if you did ever like check yourself on Facebook. All you saw from me and people like me is like, we're just so happy and proud, right? But then I did see, surprisingly, and I didn't know this existed, a certain sect of, I guess, in the model minority crowd, like you said, the group,
the Ivy Leaguers.
Yeah, the Ivy Leaguers that were like kind of mad. So I'm saying it turned into that nerd jock old school dichotomy, and then you were splitting the difference. You know what I mean? So it was like splitting the atom. It was just crazy. I don't know. I guess, did you ever hear about that dynamic?
I don't think I've ever heard about that. You know, obviously at that time I wasn't really reading too much of what was going on. It was just because the game's coming so fast and whatever. But that's interesting that you put it like that. That's really interesting to hear.
How much does your brain ever wander into these like very I guess strange ripples that your impact has throughout that maybe you're not even aware of?
That's the thing, is like there are so many things going on that I'm not aware of. Like, because to be, you know, when we do anything, you know, I can only focus on so much. Like when you guys think about like your videos or what you're gonna do, like you can't listen to every voice that's out there, because it's like, it doesn't matter what you do, someone's not gonna be happy. It's like being a ref in a basketball game. It's like there's a 50-50 call, and guess what? When you call it one way, the other side isn't gonna be happy. When you call it that way, it's just like you can't listen to everybody. And so for me, it's like I try to keep myself detached from everything, and part of it is because I'm oblivious to, in some ways, to what people are saying, because I just don't want to know.
Is it like a hot chick who friend zones a lot of guys or something? I don't know. You don't know.
I don't wanna know. If you're hating on me, keep it on the low. All right, everybody, thank you so much for watching so far. That was the end of part 1 of this Asian Guys Talk About the NBA with Jeremy Lin. But we got part 2 coming, so please stay tuned for that. It's just as good.
Thank you for watching part 1. We got a couple videos on the side. Make sure you guys check them out. I also have my description, my channel below. Make sure you guys follow that.